So we're in a rather difficult situation. Markets are doing very well because they don't believe the president, which is giving the president the confidence to go around imposing ever more draconian taxes on US consumers.
President Trump has warned he will impose tariffs on a wide range of Canadian goods if no trade deal is reached by August 1st. If that happens, prices on everything from food to cars in the US could surge. Are you ready to pay more for the exact same things? President Trump has just announced that a 35% tariff will be applied to imports from Canada if the two countries fail to reach a trade agreement by August 1st, 2025. According to a letter sent to Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, this proposed rate is over 15 times higher than the current average tariff of around 2.3%. Based on WTO data, the sudden increase could sharply raise prices on Canadian goods including milk, cars, and auto parts. Estimates suggest the cost of an imported vehicle could rise by USD 4,000 to 5,000, while the average household may see an additional USD 2,300 in annual consumer costs. The 35% tariff is part of a broader effort targeting more than 20 countries, including the EU and Mexico, in hopes of pressuring partners to settle trade deals before mid-2025. US companies that rely on Canadian imports would likely pass these costs on to consumers, leading to higher retail prices across categories. Analysis from the Yale Budget Lab estimates this could cost U.S. households an additional USD 1,300 to 4,700 annually, disproportionately affecting lower-income families. With tighter budgets, families may cut back on travel, dining, or healthcare, directly impacting quality of life. The average tariff on imported goods into the United States has jumped to 18%, the highest level since 1934, according to the latest data from the U.S. International Trade Commission. Since the beginning of the year, more than 60 new tariff notices have been issued, targeting major trading partners. With this rapid-fire approach to tariffs, many American businesses are struggling to adapt. Companies are being forced to delay expansion, cut back on investment, or more often raise prices to cover new costs. And as usual, it is the end consumer who feels it most. Everyday items in your shopping cart, toilet paper, coffee, canned goods are being affected. For instance, if you bought a pack of toilet paper for USD 15 last week, you might return this week to find it at 17 USD without any warning. These small increases, especially on weekly purchases, quietly chip away at household budgets before you realize it. This kind of price pressure not only makes shopping more expensive, but also builds anxiety around spending. When costs keep creeping up, families are forced to weigh every grocery run, every meal plan directly impacting the daily standard of living for millions of Americans. Despite repeated announcements from President Trump about new tariffs on imports, U.S. stock markets have remained outwardly calm. Nvidia's stock just reached a 4 trillion USD valuation, helping lift the NASDAQ and S&P 500 during the second week of July. But behind the scenes, investors are getting increasingly uneasy as trade policy shifts faster than businesses can react. With the trade negotiation deadline pushed back to August, companies are stuck in limbo, unsure whether to import now, raise prices, or hold off entirely. President Trump is also reportedly considering raising the base tariff rate from 10% to 15-20% for all trading partners. If that happens, the cost of importing raw materials and parts will jump significantly. U.S. manufacturers will have to absorb these costs, but in the end, much of that gets passed on to consumers. So if you paid $15 USD for toilet paper last week, you could be looking at 17 USD or even 18 USD in just a few weeks. And it is not just imports that are affected. Even goods labeled Made in USA rely on imported components. Electronics, cars, canned soups, kitchen appliances, nearly everything has some imported part. For everyday Americans, this means higher grocery bills, more cautious shopping, and tightening the household budget one purchase at a time. Japan has formally rejected a request from President Donald Trump to increase U.S. rice imports, despite warnings of potential new tariffs. Could this firm stance trigger a deeper escalation in U.S.-Japan trade tensions? The Japanese government announced it would not sacrifice rice farmers to meet U.S. trade demands, even after former President Trump warned of new tariffs if Tokyo failed to increase rice imports from the United States. According to Reuters, Japan imported $110 million USD worth of American rice during the first 4 months of 2025 and nearly 300 million in 2024, a notable rise compared to prior years. Despite that, Tokyo remains committed to its 770,000-ton import quota under WTO agreements and imposes high tariffs on imports exceeding that limit, a safeguard intended to shield domestic agriculture. Japan's stance reflects not only economic policy, but also political strategy. Rice farmers, concentrated in rural prefectures, are a key support base for the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, the LDP, which faces an important upper house election on July 20. At this critical moment, protecting rural livelihoods and price stability is viewed as a higher priority than making external trade concessions. From a domestic perspective, Tokyo's position aligns with broader concerns about rising food costs and climate-driven supply pressures. With rice prices already under pressure from poor harvests and elevated input costs, Japanese policymakers are focused on maintaining stable agricultural output and shielding consumers from additional volatility. Since the 1970s, Japan has run one of the world's most extensive farm protection programs, including subsidies to reduce rice production. Though officially ended in 2018, the government continues to incentivize shifts to soybeans and other crops to control domestic rice output and prices. In 2024, extended adverse weather reduced crop yields, while rice consumption among younger generations declined. As a result, domestic prices doubled. A 5-kilo bag of rice in Tokyo now costs around $30, placing added strain on households with limited incomes. This shift affects more than grocery bills. Schools and urban families are rethinking traditional meals, turning to cheaper staples like noodles, bread, and imported grains. Long-term, such changes could alter the culinary identity of Japan. While current tensions center on agriculture, broader trade impacts are emerging. In response to tariff threats, Japan imposed a 25% duty on certain U.S. auto and metal exports. With no new bilateral trade deal in place, American industries now face both reduced market access and higher costs. The uncertainty has rippled into financial markets. In early 2025, the U.S. dollar experienced its steepest decline since 1973, driven by concerns over rising federal spending and failed negotiations with key partners like Japan. Meanwhile, Japan's Nikkei 225 index dropped 1.2% following Trump's tariff comments, reflecting investor unease over unclear trade policies. For American consumers, continued friction could lead to higher prices on goods reliant on Japanese parts and materials. States with strong ties to automotive and metal industries may also face job losses and stalled investment if tensions escalate without resolution. Canada is making bold economic moves as U.S. trade policies trigger a wave of responses. Could these changes quietly reshape what Americans buy and how much they pay? In 2024, the Trump administration imposed a 50% tariff on imported aluminum to protect U.S. metal industries. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, prices of aluminum products rose 22% within months. This hit American manufacturers and construction firms hard, especially those reliant on imports. Canada, which supplies over 70% of North America's aluminum, responded strongly. Aluminerie Alouette in Quebec announced a $1.1 billion plant modernization, powered by low-cost clean energy from hydro, Quebec. Quebec's economy minister stated, "The U.S. depends on U.S. for aluminum, and we won't stand by." For Americans, the effects are immediate. The price surge affects home renovation, auto repair, and beverage packaging. Costs on products like soda cans and appliances may rise, adding up to $2.5 billion annually for U.S. consumers. Small businesses in construction and manufacturing face tighter margins and difficult decisions. Canada is rapidly diversifying trade. In early 2024, non-U.S. exports rose 18%, while U.S. bound exports fell to their lowest since the pandemic. Gold exports to the U.K. jumped over 30%. Crude oil to Singapore hit records, and Italian imports of Canadian aluminum and pharmaceuticals reached all-time highs. Pork exports to Japan rose 13%, with Canadian food favored for its clean, traceable image. As Canada looks beyond the U.S., American buyers risk losing access to key supplies, from metals to pharma ingredients, weakening supply chains, raising costs, and reducing product availability. U.S. consumers may face higher prices or longer wait times for top, quality goods. Canada's Industry Minister Melanie Joly criticized the Trump administration's trade tactics, saying, "We are in a tariff war, and negotiating with the U.S. is tougher than ever." She announced a 3-point response: stronger anti-dumping rules, better liquidity support for industry, and faster project approvals, cut from 5 years to 2. Joly also introduced incentives to attract top researchers, noting, "Canada welcomes talent, especially as academic freedom faces challenges in the U.S. Canada's assertive approach may heighten competition for talent and investment. U.S. universities and tech industries risk a brain drain as researchers and students OPT for Canada's more supportive environment. This could affect American innovation and growth in tech, biotech, and energy. Canada is investing heavily in green energy, hydro, hydrogen, and advanced fuels to lead the global energy shift. High-value exports like battery tech, advanced materials, and aerospace are priorities. The goal? Commercial independence and freedom from Washington's changing moods. If Canada becomes a clean tech and export leader, U.S. industries could lose a key supplier and tech partner. That could mean tougher competition, reduced influence in North America, and, for consumers, fewer options, and higher costs for next-gen products like EVs and energy-efficient appliances.
American wheat exports are quietly vanishing from the world market, with over $700 million lost in just 6 months. What happens when a silent shift in global confidence reshapes the everyday reality for families and communities? In just 6 months, over $700 million in U.S. wheat value vanished, not from disasters, but from lost trust. Major buyers like the Philippines, Mexico, South Korea, France, and Italy quietly shifted orders to Canada. No protests, no disputes, just idle grain ships, overflowing silos, and in some cases, wheat burned in fields. As buyers disappeared, for everyday Americans, this silent export collapse hits hard. Farmers face uncertain futures, and rural communities see jobs, incomes, and small businesses vanish. The loss may not make headlines, but its impact is deeply felt. In towns where a missing overseas buyer means empty wallets at home. The issue goes beyond weather or price. Global buyers no longer trust the U.S. trade system's stability. Confusing customs, inconsistent paperwork, and fears of export bans are driving them away. In contrast, Canada offers a transparent, AI-driven system that tracks quality and coordinates logistics, documents, and insurance. Though U.S. wheat is cheaper, importers now pay more to avoid risk, seeing the system, not the wheat, as unreliable. Low prices no longer guarantee sales. For Americans, and this distrust erodes economic confidence. Farmers and shippers struggle to secure contracts and plan finances. As U.S. reliability fades, banks, suppliers, and rural businesses feel the strain. Stability, once the backbone of prosperity, is now just a memory. Canada has redefined global agricultural trade by delivering timely, standardized shipments with precise documentation. It has earned the trust of markets like the Philippines and the EU. Canadian wheat exports to the EU have risen 40%, with France and Italy shifting 45% of former US orders to Canada. In Mexico, Canada built inspection and packaging centers to meet local import rules, pushing out US wheat entirely. For American communities, this means lost opportunities and rising competition. Jobs, investment, and export-driven growth are shifting north, leaving once thriving towns facing uncertain futures as global buyers turn elsewhere. For many American farmers, the crisis is all-encompassing. Credit lines have tightened, loans for new equipment are denied, milling plants are closing and unsold. Wheat stocks are piling up, the logistics network has been disrupted, rail routes canceled, silos left unmaintained, and planting plans for next season put on hold. The ripple effects go far beyond the farm. Banks are wary of lending, supply stores see dwindling sales, and entire communities question their economic futures. The trusted American agricultural brand, built over a century, is now overshadowed, not by poor product but by unpredictable policy and unreliable systems. As families reconsider their ties to farming, the foundation of rural America is being tested in ways not seen for generations.